time for Debrief, TRT World's weekly roundup of top stories.
In a 24-hour sit-in protest.
To increase pressure.
Say that again.
أنا duyamıyorum çünkü internet gitti. Şimdi tamam.
Thank you.
Some breaking news now. Hamas has now responded to Donald Trump's proposed peace plan. Here's what we're hearing so far. Hamas says it has agreed to release all Israeli hostages alive, or including also the dead hostages. The group has promised to hand over. Hamas says that it affirms its readiness to immediately engage in negotiations through mediators to discuss details on the matter. It has reiterated its agreement, again, to hand over the administration of the Gaza Strip to a Palestinian body of independent technocrats.
Israel's assaults across Gaza killed nearly 100 Palestinians, including civilians seeking aid.
What's happening here are massacres that are condemned internationally.
Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have already fled Gaza's largest city.
The Palestinian Ministry of Health said Sunday the death toll from Israel's 2-year genocidal war has officially surpassed 66,000.
The recognition of the state of Palestine by the UK and its counterparts was largely symbolic. We know that because the picture on the ground in Gaza hasn't changed much.
Israel's isolation on the world stage is even more pronounced this year, as more Western nations call for recognition of a Palestine state. Most Palestinians and most Israelis do not want a two-state coexistence.
We won't do it.
Trump insists that a deal is in its final stages. Hamas insists, though, negotiations have been suspended, while Netanyahu maintains it's far from a done deal.
A US-led plan seeks to end the war and shape Gaza's post-war future.
My plan calls for the creation of a new international oversight body, the Board of Peace.
All remaining hostages must be released in exchange for humanitarian aid. Freeing a number of Palestinian prisoners from Israeli jails, Hamas must disarm. Israeli forces must retreat, followed by a full withdrawal once a stabilization force is deployed. No Palestinian will be forced from their land, suggesting a potential pathway to a future Palestinian state.
If Hamas does not accept the agreement, then Trump is, as we've been hearing, effectively giving Israel the green light to carry on with its bombing campaign.
If Hamas rejects the deal, which is always possible, they're the only one left. Everyone else has accepted it.
Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected parts of Trump's peace plan.
Hamas has always said that it will not relinquish, it will not give up its arms until the occupation is over. What would prevent Netanyahu from saying that Hamas or anybody within the Gaza Strip violated the terms of this plan? Once Hamas gives up its leverage, which is the Israeli captives in the Gaza Strip, as well as its arms.
What I see in this is an absence of any Palestinian voice in the formulation of this plan.
We're watching the Global Sumud Flotilla this hour as it attempts to deliver aid to Gaza.
Israel's military has begun intercepting the Global Sumud Flotilla, a non-violent humanitarian convoy en route to Gaza.
And we will comply with all orders that are legal. The order to shut down our engines and prepare to be boarded in international waters is an act of piracy. So we will continue to sail, and they will continue to do whatever it is they're going to do, and I guess history will be our judge.
But Israel would not allow its blockade on the Palestinian enclave to be breached. Vessels have been diverted to Ashdod port north of Gaza after being forcibly boarded.
These may be the hands-up endings that most observers expected when the Sumud Flotilla launched a month ago. But as the ordeal plays out in front of a worldwide audience, the outrage is no less in places like Brussels, Buenos Aires, Paris, Milan, where protests got hot, and Istanbul, where protests got loud.
The people on the ground say that they are the flotilla of the ground, and that if something is not done, they will put a stop to all activities in Italy. And in fact, a 2-day general strike has been called.
This is a very strong message to global powers, those who could have brought an end to the genocide in Gaza. Those 500 people, they have lived everything, they have lived their life, and they have been into the sea for days and days and days to break the siege on Gaza. This is their message.
It's a symbol of conscience, it's a symbol of humanity, it's a symbol of the fact that people across the globe should support Palestinians in Gaza, should do whatever they can to stop the genocide. That is the message, and I do believe that most of these activists strongly believe that their message have been conveyed.
What has made you come onto a boat in the middle of the Mediterranean to possibly even risk your life?
The world had to do something. Regular civilians can do something and can change things.
And even more top stories coming your way in the News and Brief. Unidentified drones continue to shut down major European airports. This week, it was Munich's turn to adjust flights. While it's not certain that Russia is behind the drones, European leaders are not ruling it out. These aerial disruptions took center stage at this week's European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen, alongside discussions of the war in Ukraine.
And it's why the last 2 days of summits here have been all about how to move faster and harder on support, EU membership for Ukraine, more sanctions on Russia, air defense systems, anti-drone systems, long-range missiles, and of course, how to fund it all, with the use of frozen Russian assets being pushed forward.
Not everyone is open to the idea though, and Moscow is calling it a delusion. But before discussing future spending, the bloc needs to get its current purchases in order. Hungary buying Russian oil is one such issue.
I can't change geography, you know, I try to be a strong man, but I can change policy, but I can't change geography. Hungary is a landlocked country, so we have pipelines only. So we have to buy it from the Russians.
President Trump wouldn't be happy to hear that. Speaking of the US, on Tuesday, the newly titled Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, called military leaders around the world for what seemed to be an unusual pep talk.
Frankly, it's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are.
The address was more of a dressing down, and the military's response was silence. Hegseth promised sweeping changes aimed to reverse the quote-unquote woke department back on track. So, shaving is in. Being a woman in uniform, not so much. Another change the US troops need to get used to is, in President Trump's words, an invasion from within.
And then I told Pete, we should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city.
Trump had earlier announced that he would be sending the National Guard to Portland, Oregon. Across the world on Monday, Afghanistan was cut off from the internet for nearly 2 days, supposedly after orders from the Taliban government. The country got back online on Wednesday, although the reason why the internet was shut down in the first place remained unclear. A Taliban official said the reason for the outage was technical. Industry sources, however, said going offline was by government decree. The Taliban cut off the internet in northern parts of the country recently, citing moral concerns. The 48-hour blackout hit banking services, stranded flights, and prevented many Afghans living abroad from communicating with home. And now it's Madagascar's turn for Gen Z-led mass protests. It initially started in Antananarivo, the island nation's capital, over water shortages and power blackouts, and raged on for over a week. The UN says at least 22 people were killed and over 100 were injured, causing President André Duel to dissolve government on Monday. That wasn't enough to satisfy the demonstrators. They're demanding his resignation. The president is refusing these calls, saying the protests are foreign-backed and criticism of existing problems should come through dialogue instead of the streets.
They say we are a TikTok generation, a generation of idiots. But when we rise up, they don't let us speak about the country's problems. A message for you, Mr. Rogelina. When you led the protests, they let you do it. It was okay. But when the young people fight for the country, you stop us.
And now for a taste of our programs.
Peace in the Democratic Republic of the Congo is still mostly a promise. There are discrepancies between the progress we see on paper and the reality we observe.
The UN also blames armed groups in eastern DRC for the rise in civilian attacks. It says more than 1,000 Congolese people have been killed in Ituri and North Kivu since June. Now this, as the former president Joseph Kabila is convicted and handed down a death sentence in absentia. He was found guilty of backing M23 rebels who have seized large parts of the country's east.
Republicans and Democrats in the US Senate are still in disagreement over federal funding, and until there's a compromise, the government will remain closed for business. Republicans control both chambers of Congress, but they've fallen short of the 60 votes they need to pass their desired spending legislation in the 100-seat Senate. Many government services are on pause, with hundreds of thousands of employees staying at home without pay.
You just have all this uncertainty. So I wish they would just get their act together so that we can all do what we do best at work, which is work and work for the American people, because I do work for the government.
And Europe have retained the Ryder Cup after a dramatic 15-13 win over the USA in New York.
Despite a massive lead going into Sunday, it wasn't until match 8 that Europe could celebrate. Shane Lowry wholly on 18 to claim the vital half point needed to retain golf's greatest event.
The Ryder Cup means everything to me, honestly. I won the Open in Ireland, it's amazing, it's a dream come true, but the Ryder Cup for me is everything.
Luke Donald's side dominated the first 2 days in front of a hostile and abusive crowd on Long Island.
You know, to be prepared for an away Ryder Cup, you have to deal with that, and I thought they dealt with it amazing.
His side opened up a 3-1 lead in the Friday foursomes, and despite the arrival of another golfing Donald, rammed home the advantage in the afternoon. The Americans were proving to be sore losers. Their vitriol grew on day 2 with tensions boiling over onto the course. But Europe, particularly Rory McIlroy, somehow didn't let the abuse put them off. The holders won 3 matches in the morning and 3 in the afternoon.